So I want to articulate and build out this timepiece, this clock that I've created based on the quantum memoir cycles of time, the solar cycle, the lunar cycle, and my Wax Wane cycle, which is basically like a daily cycle. And so what I've done is I've created all of these cycles into three, and I've put them into one clock piece that I'm gonna articulate right here, just so that I have basically a lesson, like a guide, that when I'm teaching people this, when I do the apprenticeship with others to do the revolution of time, this ability to alchemize your perception through biology, through biomimicry with nature, then this will basically be the teaching piece, the piece that I use so that I can amuse others, right? So yeah, let's dive in, but I can see I need a moment. I need to kind of tune into the inspiration of what I've done here. So let me just take a breath and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's just imagine for a moment that we all live in this one universe of information. Whatever you want to call it, we live in this one greater field. And so I kind of have that illustrated here, right? So this is like the universe. And then within there, we have our actual matrix that we live in. Okay, so we have this more defined, set of laws and rules that we live in the natural world. And then what we've done is, as humans have evolved, we've kind of like solidified and put an outline and clarified what these laws and rules are, over the time that's gone on, that we've been communicating and engaging with one another and with our environment. And so what this does is it kind of pulls us together. We have Metatron here. You can start to see the lines of how they all start to pull together and relate. So then the thing that becomes obvious to me, that once we start to live in this matrix, is that the most definable thing that we can see is duality. We have this yin and yang. We have day and night. We have light and dark. We also have the summer and the winter. We also have the lunar cycles, which also demonstrate that waxing and waning of energy, that you have the yang on one side and you have the yin on the other side. So you kind of have this cycle of motion that happens through these spheres of time. And now when you're looking at this, you can really start to see that box start to pop out and take shape. You see that? So although we're talking about time and a perception of spheres, of circles, you are almost inevitably also talking about something that is confined and boxed in. And so this is where I sort of see the similarity between the cycle of times that I use and then what would be called a calendar, like the Gregorian calendar, where you have boxes and squares of weeks and days. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to merge these two perspectives in a way that helps my life, be more in rhythm with like the circadian rhythm and the night and day dance of life. Like more of like a breathing with the natural world versus just using the colonized calendar, for work weeks. So that's kind of where this is all taking shape. And literally you can see it taking shape, right? You can start to see like depth coming in and out of it. So when I'm looking at this, when I work with this in the fruit of life pattern here, often you just see that fruit of life and you're looking at something that looks like a static image. But in my conception of how I've, laid out this code is that it's very dynamic. It's like the vector equilibrium. It's moving and breathing. And you can start to see that as I put that flower of life in the background of the fruit of life. So now let's dig a little bit deeper. What humans have done, we've come up with this concept of time. And actually we can think of it like a day is 24 hours. But with those 24 hours, you have two of these 12-hour time cycles. I would suggest that one of them would be waxing and one of them are waning. The 12 and the 12 of the face dial would make 24 hours. So I find that there's something interesting in the fact that the face dial only has half of the time that's within one day, such as AM and PM, you see? So this would be the AM and then this would be the PM. So what I've done is I've kind of eradicated the 12-hour clock and I've just illustrated a 24-hour clock, because what I want to see is I want to actually see the waxing and waning times of the day. So when then I put my little hour in here, I'll be able to rotate this around and see what time of day it is. And I think it's 1 o'clock. So I'm going counterclockwise. This is not going to look like the time that you would see as 1 o'clock, but I can see that I'm still very much in the end of that yang energy, and I'm starting to dip into the yin energy of the day. So then I have my daily timepiece that demonstrates the waxing and waning of a day, the yin and yang of a day. And so then if I kind of come out then to this next sphere, see that I have the seed words in here. These are the inner seed words of the quantum memoir, the thought form practice that I use that replicates this cycle of nature of starting out in the darkness, waning energy, increasing it, and then expressing it, releasing it, and then just doing it all over again. So that's what the 7 seed words represent. And that's how I've started to recognize the night and the day, the waxing and waning of the moon, you know, the change of the seasons from winter to summer. So all I've started to do is I've started to code those concepts into this original 7 seed word practice that I came up with. And so now when we're in this inner ring of spheres, we have ground, intend, observe, connect, express, and refine. These are the things that help you fulfill your day or your purpose. So in these spheres, you can see that I have the new moon illustrated, the waxing crescent. Let's go ahead and put those titles in there. You have the waxing crescent, the waxing gibbous, the full moon, the waning gibbous, and the waning crescent. Okay, so now you start to see how those moon cycles very much replicate the day cycle. So now let's go ahead and move to the outer spheres and build our solar cycle, the cycle of going around this wheel in the amount of a year. That would be like 12 moons, 13 moons, depending on how you like to look at it, and then 12 months if you subscribe to the Gregorian calendar. So now we have these extra spheres filled in between the fruit of life spheres that I typically work with. And this puts us with 12 spheres around one, the purpose. So these 12 months or these 12 moons are going to help us fulfill our lunar cycles and fulfill our daily cycle to where whatever your purpose is overall for the revolution of time, then you've taken the action steps from a very finite, like a very micro level, and you've expanded them like this flower of life pattern. You've expanded them over longer periods of time with your focus and your attention. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fill in the titles of the months so that you could see those. And with that, you see that we also have what people would start to relate to seasons of the year. I have them listed as the solstices and the equinox here at the horizon line. So let's just kind of let that simmer and sit for a second. Let's just look at this. So you have your purpose in the center, and then you're going to ground yourself, intend, observe, connect, express, and refine to make this energetic cycle. What that's symbolic in is the cycle of a day of waxing and waning. It's also symbolic in the waxing and waning of the moon. And it's also symbolic of the waxing and waning of seasons in our solar cycle as we rotate around the sun. So we begin down here in the winter in December. This would be the winter solstice when I begin my cycle of the solar season. And then I go from January, February. These start to be transitions into spring at March, the spring equinox. Then we have transitions of April and May into June, the summer solstice. July, August, September, October, November, and then we start again in December. Just as I begin the new moon at night in the dark and work my way around. Just as I begin my day at night and begin and work my way around. So this is how I plan on using this as an actual timekeeper, a piece of energy. Because what I realized recently was that whatever the energy, say, like right now, we're in the refined time, we're in this October, we're in this refined energy. You can see it's mostly yin energy, the darkness, the waning crescent energy down here in October. And I related that, wow, this happened in September. It was also the same time of the year, was the same time of the lunar cycle. So like if it was October and it was also the waning crescent, then to me that things are really lining up in a potent way. So then I would also say that time of day is like a key window of whatever it is that I'm working on for my purpose. So for right now, Well, I'll get into that in a second. I'll show you how it's used. So basically that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to see the relationship of the energy that's associated with the seed word of the quantum memoir with the time of day, the time of the moon, and the time of the sun. And so that I can have some type of, feedback and experiment for myself as I've been living out here in the wild, and I'm really trying to get in tune with nature and get my body into a better state of wellness. So now let's go ahead and look at this as a clock. So let's start with this. I'm gonna just kind of bring this whole picture from the outside and we're gonna work our way back in, I think. So I put these outer ticks here. So there's 12 here. And what these are, they're notating, you could see they're the axis of each one of these spheres, how they line up. And that also lines up with like vector equilibrium lines, Metatron lines. So there's geometric measurements that are coded within this. And how I use the chakras, I have my root chakra, my sacral chakra, solar plexus, heart, throat, and then this right here is the third eye. And then I use the center sphere as my purpose, and that's the crown chakra. So that's the coding that I use within the quantum memoir, and you can do it however you want. But I have these little color codes here because what that tells me is what energy the December and new moon means for me. That means that I should focus on my root chakra. In February of the year, or in the waxing crescent time of the moon, or, basically in certain hours of the morning, around 10 o'clock, I should be using my sacral chakra, my creative energy. Here in the waxing gibbous in April, I'm really going to be keying in my solar plexus energy so that by the time I reach the summer solstice, I have like illuminated my heart chakra. I'm in this full force of energy here. So you can see how that would just keep going around. So you can see that I have the chakras in there. And then the next thing that I've encoded is I've just filled out these extra little tickers here. If we're looking at these as lunar cycles in here, like a full month, then that means that we have two waxing weeks and 2 waning weeks. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and illustrated that for this time of the moon, or month, depending on which title you want to play with, which, system or statement of thought that you want to use, you have a waxing energy and you have a waning energy. So if we look at December, you can see the 2 first weeks are more of a building up of energy. And then the last 2 weeks are the expression after the full moon. And so this is just symbolic kind of information so that I can see what I'm doing in those specific times of the year. So this is all the way around for the entire time of the year. And I think this will help it make a little bit more sense. So this is where we are within October, within the year. So I have this little dial that I can spin around, and we just had the September moon, you see? Or you could say the September month, depending on the time that you want to track, but I do it by moon. So now we're in the October moon. So I have these 2 weeks of energy that are in yellow, that are building up. And then at this blue marker at my third eye chakra in October, then I'm going to wane that energy. And then I'll build up 2 weeks of waxing energy to the full moon in November, and then it will wane. And then I will have this waxing energy up until December's full moon, which will also be around the winter solstice. And then that energy will wane. So these yellow and gray spots on the outer perimeter, those are showing me my waxing and waning energies of the lunar cycle as it relates to that time of the year. And that's what this yellow wheel is. It's indicating that I'm in the October lunation of my alchemy of perception. And so then if I go ahead and add my dial for, I've already done it, for the, so you can see what it would look like without the lunar dial. And then I'm going to add the lunar dial in there, this little cog that I can also spin so that I can show, what time of the month it is. So when it moves to the waxing gibbous, then I can just spin my little dial here and I can see that, in the waxing gibbous, I'm in my observation of the lunar cycle, but I'm also in the refined October. So I'm kind of like on this what would you call this? This is like an opposite, right? This is a paradox. This is the duality. I'm over here in energy and I'm over there in energy. So there's a relationship to this that I could look deeper into if I so feel called to. And so then eventually we'll move up to the full moon. And so this dial will just keep spinning around and letting me know what cycle of the moon am I in and what cycle of the sun am I in. And then, as I said, I can move my time dial, which I don't necessarily need to do because I can, I can relate to the hours of the military time, but I would move my time dial and then I would see where I'm at that time of day. So let's just put everything back to where we are at right now in time. So that's it. My alchemy of perception. This is for me to use the cycles of nature, the cycles of light and darkness in order for me to manifest my purpose, for me to go around this wheel of the seed words of the quantum memoir so that I could fulfill actions that are going to help me with that purpose. If you're interested in taking the free creation cycle course, that will get you started and head you towards the lunar cycle and the solar cycle. If you would like to have tutoring with me, I also offer one-on-one sessions. And then I do have, we have this cycle ending. So coming up in this new solar cycle, I'll be able to do another internship if anybody else wants to do the revolution of time and ride along with me. So I hope you found that fascinating. Hopefully it inspires you to look at time in an entirely different way. And if you want to look at some of the citations and the notes that went into me really pulling this together in the end, you could go to the quantummemoir.com website and visit the collective, and you'll see a thought form that's called the calendar and the clock that I recently did so that I could really dial in the information that I was coding here. So thanks for watching.